Welcome to another episode of Parenting Teens Advice Redefined. Parenting teens often pulls us in every direction, emotionally, mentally, and physically. And while we're trying to stay grounded while supporting these incredible humans as they grow, they stretch, and they sometimes struggle, as do we. But if the way to better support our kids isn't about doing more, it's about being more. It's about being more calm, more centered, and in alignment with ourselves. And today's guest is someone who embodies that philosophy. I am sitting down with Brett Aldrich, Ayurvedic counselor, breathwork practitioner, and founder of Seed the Spirit in Portland, Maine. Brett blends decades of service from working with trauma survivors and with children with developmental needs to now guiding through Ayurvedic breathwork and yoga to find lasting emotional and spiritual balance. We are diving into how Ayurvedic wisdom and breathwork can help parents regulate, restore, and align, not just for our own well-being, but to model peace and presence for our teens. So if you are feeling stretched thin, reactive, or just out of sync lately, this conversation is going to offer you a different way home. Welcome, Brett. Thank you for being on my show. I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for having me. I am also very excited to start talking about all of this. It's so great. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's important work. So let's start with your story, Brett. Why now? What's the mission? What is the hope for you and for who's working with you?
Sure. I have also had many chapters of beginning to now, right? So I began my practices in yoga a long time ago when my daughter was born. I was in a position where I was granted the ability to stay home full time. And during that time, I came to the realization there was a lot I needed to learn that I was unknowing to. And, what started was my daughter had severe allergies to certain foods. And that really just tipped it off to the whole process. When I began work, I was working in victim services, did a lot of social work, worked in shelter work. It was a lot of deep, challenging work. And I was at a point where I understood that I needed to support myself through it as well. And I wasn't sure how to. So in that process of, understanding what my daughter needed and trying to figure out what to do when I went back to work myself, I was kind of like, I don't really know what to do. I really had no idea. So the way I got to here was just really by accident, I thought. Maybe it was accident, maybe it wasn't. There could be something else going on. Of course, there's always other, things going on that we are unaware of, or I was, the Ayurvedic practices that I started to learn, the classes that I was taking. At first, I thought I was going to share with others to start. But really what it was to support me through the process of being a mother, being a human being, and knowing that there were so many other ways to support my children and myself with this time of being a parent. And now that two of them are adults. So it's been such a long process and going through challenging moments. And I've had some real challenging moments in my own life that I've had to come back from. And with this understanding with Ayurveda and breathwork, I was able to utilize those tools to get to the other side and thrive. And that was the biggest piece for me, is not just going through something that, we sometimes don't have a choice in, but then also knowing, and that was the biggest piece for me, was knowing that I could get better every day that went by after going through something. And that was the biggest piece for me, was just knowing that I could get better and having the tools to use to continue for better health for myself and to show that it's possible for my children as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I've been doing yoga for, oh my gosh, I'm going to say 25 years and deep into hot yoga for the last at least 10. And, you start off thinking this is just exercise but it becomes so much more. And I find that this deep work that I've been doing a lot of, you know, the meditation and all of that stuff I've been doing for a long time. And it's not like, you know, you go to the gym and you lift all these weights and you start to see immediate results almost. You see these muscles starting to build. But it's such a, I don't know about you, but I found there's so many nuances to it. Whereas I would come through a challenging situation and maybe days later go, I handled that. Like, I'm out of it so much more quickly than I thought I would ever be before. And it took me a while to figure out that that was the tie. It's this work that allowed me to go, okay, this does not define me. This is not my story. This is not, you know, friends of mine all the time will hear me say, but that's your story. But that's your story when they're, you know, upset about something or stressed, but that's your story. What story are you telling yourself? They hear me say it all the time, probably sick of it. But my point is, this work is so worth it. And yet I think sometimes, you know, we get up there and we say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to meditate for a couple of days and then I'm going to go through the most challenging situation and nothing happened. I still suck. So I think knowing that there are nuances to this, that it takes time. And so I want to start off with really, you know, sometimes we get into these things and we hear words like Ayurveda. And if moms have never heard the word, have no idea what the hell you're talking about, let's bring it right back to, I've never heard this term. Can you please explain to me what is Ayurvedic? What is breathwork? Like, what actually it is for someone who's never heard it before?
Sure. Ayurveda, we always say that it is the study of life. Okay. Pretty much that's it. In where I can say from my own personal experience, where we could be living anywhere, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be one particular country or place. We could be living anywhere and everything matters. Mm-hmm. Right? So everything we do does affect us, or everything we experience does affect us, or everything we do can affect ourselves or others around us too as well. And pretty much at this point, it's understanding and studying yourself so well that you know what you're made out of. You know, we have physical characteristics. We have certain tendencies, emotional tendencies emotionally. We have a mindset sometimes. We have understandings of the world around us. And all of them are connected to, interestingly enough, to elements. You know, there's fire, there's earth, there's water, there's air, and then there's ether. And all of those 5 elements are connected to us. We are all made out of that. We're all made out of it, and everything is made out of it, basically, at this point. And there's just different combinations of all of them with each experience, or even what we eat, what we drink for water, or any kind of thing we drink or consume or imbibe. Yeah. So, and our actions are similar too, and they all have characteristics. And so what it is trying and making attempts to balance all of those to feel sattvic, or peaceful, or at peace within. Okay. There may not necessarily be peace outside. However, we take these practices and to have peace within, and also to have this kind of lifestyle to find a way to have an internal balance so our body can heal from anything, you know, physical that might be going on, or mental or emotional. Yeah. And so we take this understanding, so we're all made out of it, right? So I'll just use myself as an example. You know, I have maybe more fire and water in me, right? So there's characteristics that we have that, you know, I pretty much have studied. So I understand. So once you understand what you're made out of, what you do is you make choices for yourself that might balance that out. So you might choose opposite than yourself. So to balance out on the inside. So what they say is, similar things increases, right? So like increases like, but then if you do the opposite, it starts to balance. So if I have a lot of fire and water in me, then I'll probably choose air, something airy, something ether, something cooler, maybe too, to consume or to do. to balance myself on the inside. So if I have a lot of fire and I eat a lot of spicy food, that could create an imbalance inside my body. So what I do is I choose cooler things to cool out my body, things to even me out, things like that. So it's basically making choices that do balance you on the inside by knowing yourself as well. That makes
interesting. As you say that, I've never heard it described like that at all. So if you were to say, well, how do I know what I am? So for me, like being anywhere near water is just an instant, like I'm just so calm and it's my place to go. So would that mean that is something like I should be doing something different to balance me out? And what would that be?
It all depends, right? So it depends on you and your day. So every day's different, right? You have your own makeup, but then every day's different. The elements are different as well. So it's also seasonal. So every season has its own elements and everything has its own elements. So what it is just understanding the characters of these elements and how they work together, and then making a decision for yourself what you need for today or what you'll need for tomorrow. So yes, water is a wonderful thing. Sitting by a bubbling brook or being by the ocean if you can, or even just putting your hands in water is also a great activity or something for you in order to calm yourself down or balance you out. And it's also about what you eat too, as well. What we eat has different elements. So we choose something that balances us out, that, cools us down or ignites us as well. If we need something to wake us up, we'll have something that's invigorating and vibrant to have us propel ourselves forward in some instances. So it is basically when you get to know yourself and you know yourself well, or the elements around you, over time, you start to figure out what works best for you in the day. And sometimes it's not always meditation, but also a day of like, all right, you wake up in the morning, you're like, all right, where do I need today? And we can look at it scientifically through the elements, but also over time, you just start to understand that this is all part of the world or part of you. Yeah. So that's kind of how it operates. But there's so much more, but that is a piece of it. Yeah.
That's really interesting that you say that because, and again, my first, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, my first thing is to go to water. And so to balance myself, so I've also heard grounding, like you stand in the dirt and you just like and I have gone to that and it's so uncomfortable for me. And yet I do feel the effects. So I'm wondering if that's the same thing. It's kind of balancing out, not just relying on the water, but now I'm relying on something else to balance myself out. And I can feel the energy of the earth. Like it's so strange to me. But it's not an automatic thing. I have to think about it, but that makes sense to balance myself out. That's kind of a side note, but really interesting that you're saying that. I didn't know that. All right, so let's dive into this practice. So I've got, we talk about fight or flight all the time in these conversations. And, we're now talking to the mom who's like, I am up here, 10 out of 10 stress all freaking day that I don't even know because it's so familiar to be in fight or flight. Can we talk to that mom and say, okay, what do you know? Like, you tell me what you would say to a mom who's like, I don't even know what it feels like to calm down. This is my life, 10 out of 10, 24/7. It's what's familiar. It's almost my safety zone because it's what's familiar. What do we say to that mom?
Well, internally, what I would feel is that there's obviously so much happening going on underneath that. There's always the question that sometimes I dive into, okay, so why is this the go-to feeling? Or why is this the go-to energy or feel? What are the circumstances at hand as well? Some circumstances or some situations you can't always change. So it really is one thing at a time. It's so slow. And part of it too was I always felt this way as well for myself. I can relate to that I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
And I do recall a long time ago when they said, part of your yogic practice or yoga practice is shavasana and just lie down for 20 minutes. I was like, what? How could I do that? That's impossible. There's just no way. And why would I? That just doesn't make any sense to me. This is a senseless decision. I don't get this. I don't want to do this. I really did feel that way. Yeah, it just didn't make sense. And my mind would be racing. I'd be like thinking of like months ahead, and so hard, such a challenging thing to do. And really what it is that some of us, and I can relate to, are afraid to slow down. Like, what am I like? Who am I if I slow down? Like, what? That's so how I would really, what am I if I slow down? Like, who am I really if I slow down? Like, am I worth, like, what am I worth here if I'm not productive, if I'm not doing something? And that was such a challenge for me, like slowing down and still being, I'm still valuable, even though I'm sitting down for 20 minutes, And so the understanding is one thing at a time. I can't tell you, change everything all at once. That would actually create more dysfunction and difficulty, for so many. And it really is just what I do is, and what a lot of us do is we say, just try one thing. Just try one little thing that you can do 2 minutes, 5 minutes, that will place you in a mindset of just a moment of, even if your mind is busy, that's okay. Like, a lot of it is like just accepting who you really are. Like, that's totally great. Like, if that's who you are, I love you. It's cool. Do it. Yeah. Be you all the time. But there is that moment of like, is it affecting your health? And that's the biggest piece, is like, is this affecting your health long term? And if it is, then obviously there's something we got to start trying to do. Yeah. And that's really what we focus on. And it really is they have a list already. We already have a list of to-dos. So it's not necessarily adding to the to-do. It's just asking for space. And that's usually what I'd say first. Is there a space where you can just have space of nothing? And it may drive you a little bit, your mind may race, but like 2 minutes. Yeah. 2 minutes of space. And, over time, I have found that momentum of giving space and time of either nothing or reflection, or even leafing through a magazine, not even reading it, just leafing through something. Mm-hmm. So you're physically moving, but you're still trying to kind of let go of that need to do. Over time, it becomes a real emotional moment where like, wow, I'm actually like overdone, or, I'm actually like nervous about this, or I'm actually like upset about something, or I'm grieving something that I was avoiding. There is a lot of emotion involved with this process as well. And in a moment too, and what I try to do also as well is remind people to consume foods where their body feels safe. So knowing when you're going to drink your water, your body knows when it's going to sleep, your body knows when it's going to eat. It's so biological and simple and primitive sometimes for some, but it really is knowing when you're going to be safe and when you're going to be taken care of. So your body feels safe on the inside. So sometimes the mind can start to relax too as well and calm down. So sometimes your body just needs to know when it's going to be nourished. And that's a big piece. It's not necessarily like, do this, don't do that. It's just remind yourself to care for your body so it feels safe. So then the mind can start to let go and kind of be like, okay, I'm going to be fine for 20 minutes, and that's kind of what we try to reflect on. We can certainly go into the, as they say, guides or guidelines of Ayurveda and talk about the elements and talk about recipes and food. Yeah. But you're right. Sometimes 100%, sometimes that's a lot. That's a lot of information. But part of this process is, allowing a person to get into a rhythm where their body feels safe. Yeah. Then over time, that other stuff can start to unfold. And this is a very long process. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I found myself too also reflecting, going, gosh, I'm like, I need to slow down here. What's going on here? We can all be into that. We can all dive back into old habits. It's so easy. Yeah. Yeah.
And the art of, so let's talk about then the art of noticing
Mm-hmm.
when we are and when we aren't. And how do we notice, and then what do we do when we notice?
Yeah. Sometimes I can only really speak from personal experience, honestly, is that the noticing of like, sometimes for me or for many, it's a physical reaction. Go, oh, I've got like a little headache. I'm feeling a little thirsty. I'm having a little bit of a harder time falling asleep tonight. I'm waking up at a certain time of day. For me, that's the most obvious, is noticing, oh, like my skin's a little dry, like even little things like that, nothing really big, just like the smallest little like difference.
Yeah.
And then if you can notice that's just little bits. If you can notice that, then you go, okay, so what can I do and what's been going on these last couple weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I've forgotten about myself, that I've let myself be at the back of the list of to-dos, right? Like that's the thing on the list that we ever jump to.
Yeah.
And how can I get myself at the front? And what can I do to get myself at the front of this list, on the top of the list, not the bottom?
Yeah.
And that's the big challenge for all of us, include all of us. Me too. Absolutely.
And I'm right now just dragging in the moms of teens here as you say that, and how we say this to ourselves. And I would love to say it out loud. To your kid when they're coming home from school. It's like, oh, you know what? This I noticed this today. And I feel like, I know you need help with your homework or a ride to the mall, but I just need 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to catch myself, because you give yourself permission, but look what you're doing for your kids. Like you're just day after day after day giving them the permission to say, oh, you know what? I kind of noticed that too. I was a little snappy with my friend, or I was, whatever. And I noticed that too. And just, our kids don't listen to us like crap, but they watch everything we do. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if we give them that permission now, instead of, we're like, I don't know, I'm 60. I'm like maybe 10 years into this stuff and really noticing. But do I wish I had started talking about this when I was 25? Damn right I did. Mm-hmm. When my kids were at home, when I hear, my daughter and my son struggle now, oh, they wouldn't be struggling if I had learned this stuff earlier. And it's not a blame game by any means. It's notice it and say it. Don't keep the stuff to yourself. I used to wake up so early so the kids didn't see me journaling and meditating and doing all my stuff. I'm like, why? Like they need to see this, because this is, because then they would see the transformation. Oh man, I left my dishes in the sink and mom didn't act like World War III just happened, like a little reactive. So I think it's really important to say these things out loud to your kids and do these things out loud to your kids. Let them see it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Can you talk about breath work and what that would look like? And even like the most basic. I think people are like, I breathe all the time. What the hell? I don't need to know how to breathe. Mm-hmm. But, and again, people are, I've got moms who are just listening to this knowing, okay, I know how to breathe. Let's move on. Hold on a minute. Listen to this first.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I can speak from my children's experience too, that they're just, their observations of me are funny. They reflect, they think I'm hysterical. They think I do take it lightly with them. I'm not too serious with them about that. I don't try to force them to do it either. Absolutely, like their way of, one of my children, they left, they're like, their acts of rebellion is to, eat junk food or whatever. You know what I mean? That's like their thing. But like, but, we've been through some moments where there have been some stressful moments for us and, like all of us, like everyone. And they joke around. They're like, hang on a second. Mom's like taking a second to take a breath, like just that moment where, hold on a second. I need to take a few breaths with this one. And really is, breathing is a connection from the heart to the mind. And it gives you that pause and it nourishes the mind. And this is the thing that I have noticed for myself, that it provides nourishment to the body, provides nourishment to the mind. And I can certainly say that I have found myself, before I started these practices, the reason why, of course, I learned to do these things because I wasn't doing them for myself, right? So, how many times did I catch myself holding my breath? It was literally like, it's like, how long was I holding my breath for there? That's big.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm just making up for lost time. So consciously being aware of not just the fact that I breathe, but how I'm breathing in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us, many of us, including myself, we're breathing. However, we have a whole diaphragm, full diaphragmatic breath, which is basically from the hip points all the way up to your clavicle. So that's a huge part of our body that also protects and surrounds all of our organs and our lungs and our heart. And and the breath, if you can take a full breath, it takes care of your body.
Yeah.
It massages the organs, it massages the heart, and then provides the nourishment it needs for the mind and the brain in order to be able to function at optimal level, right? So we're able to take a moment and reflect on, how am I going to deal with this situation? How am I going to support myself when something happens that's unexpected, as the term used to say? That was unexpected, those unexpected moments. And just saying that also, our children are starting to learn this too in our elementary schools. I do remember back when I worked in education a while back that we were starting to learn this. And I was working there too as well, that the breath is something, if we're more conscious and aware of it, we're coming to understand that we will utilize it to our benefit more when we are more conscious and aware of the breath. And knowing that if we verbalize this with our children, that they're aware that mom just needs to take a pause before we act. Pause, then act. And pause, breathe, and maybe don't act at all. And there are moments in our lives where taking action or taking a longer pause is probably more useful than saying or doing anything at all in the moment yet.
Yeah.
And that is also something I learned with my own kids. They've said this to me, and I've been learning this too, is that I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to hear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that is a big piece too. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to breathe through this while you're telling me what you're saying, because I'm going to need to breathe through this.
Yeah.
There are those moments where I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to hear me. And then you breathe and you breathe, because when you're breathing, and this is something that I learned along the way too, is that the person you're working with or your child, they start to breathe with you, able to co-regulate. And that is a big piece too, is that we call it something else with our breathwork training, but the co-regulation is helpful when you're breathing and you're regulating yourself and you're calming yourself down as you're listening. They were able to do the same with you. So conversations become conversations and reflection. And that is a big piece. Is when I would hold my breath, I'd be like, I don't like this, and I'm going to hold my breath through this. But then really what's important is that, like or dislike, it's just information that we're trying to work through together. And so that is a big piece on breath work for me when it comes to being with my children and having conversation. And just in life in general, there are these moments we just are not paying attention to how we're breathing. We're not nourishing ourselves. And it's free. And that's the wonderful thing. I think that's the most important thing too, as being a parent, is that this sort of thing, once you become aware of it, you can do it every single day, and you can regulate your system, and the system in your body can feel safe. So when you say something or feel you need to take action, it's of sound mind and reflection. And just basically take care of yourself along the way. Lack of oxygen creates so many issues. And we find that if we are able to take a full diaphragmatic breath versus just in the chest or just in the belly, you're using the whole diaphragm, you're able to really take care of yourself.
Can you walk right through that? If somebody's listening, saying, I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean?
Full diaphragmatic breath?
Yeah,
absolutely. So when I'm just going to adjust my seat here so I can do it while I'm saying, so we have the diaphragm goes from like your hip point. So if you kind of place your fingertips right at the hip points, if you can go there, or just kind of in the vicinity or the area. Okay, that's your hip points. And then your clavicle is this space right at the collar space here. And the diaphragm also goes to the front of the chest, but also goes to your back. So it's a 360 degrees. Yeah. I want to say like oval, or we're going to say it's like an oval shape. Mm-hmm. And when you take a deep breath, you start from the belly. And you go up towards the chest, all the way up to the clavicle, and it goes outward to the front and to the back. And then on the exhale, out of the mouth, and try to take a full exhale. So it's pretty big. So you can go take a deep inhale from the belly, up, all the way up to the chest, then up to the clavicle. And then an exhale.
That's just instant. Like it's instant.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us don't know. That's why I really wanted to do that step by step with you, because, there's so many, I've got on YouTube breathwork sessions, and some of them are just out of control for me. I can't.
It depends on the practice. Yeah, it depends on the practice, on what kind it is. There's so many different ways to do this, right? There's so many different ways to do this. There's the quick Bastrika breath. There's the yogic breathing. There's the controlled breathing. And then this one, I can teach so many ways, right? However, this one particular way, which is just simply noticing and feeling that space and the diaphragm, and opening up the body a little bit, and knowing how expansive our body really is and how big our body can become by taking a full breath that way, is just, again, providing space, right? Providing the internal space. Yes, and there's some breathwork sessions you see people really having like these big, huge emotional releases and things like that. And then there's some people that it looks like they're not doing anything, and you're just kind of like, what's going on there? But it's both the same but different, right? And again, this is where I feel, now I'm going to bring this back, but this is where I feel Ayurveda is also helpful, and the yogic practice is also helpful, because again, the coined term is, it all depends on what you need in the moment. So for example, if you're feeling really low in energy and you're just like, oh, I just can't get out of my own way, there are techniques of breathing you can use in order to kind of give you a little bit more energy, to get the oxygen to your periphery, to your brain, to your hands, things like that. And then there's some where you're feeling, oh, I'm super like thinking too quickly, I'm like feeling anxious. There are techniques in order to bring yourself down to center, and to slow your thinking down and your mind down as well. The in the nose, out of the mouth is also very helpful. There's so many ways, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what it is just knowing in the moment what you might need at that time. However, my go-to really is just the trying to find my diaphragm and making sure that I am taking care of my body and nourishing it in that way.
Yeah. What's helpful for me in that diaphragm is I visualize it. Like I visualize the air going like almost like white air or whatever it is. And then it helps me kind of feel like, okay, it's going here, it's going here, it's going here. It's, or starting here and going here. Like I visualize that whole thing. It makes it easier for me. And the fact that there's all these different ways. Don't do the Cheryl route where you just jump into YouTube and go, I can never do breath work. I can't do whatever it is they're doing. It makes me thirsty. It makes me, I don't like that air in my nose is cold. It was so uncomfortable. So, and I'm sure those are techniques to do once you've done, 10 steps before that. But me, I'm jumping into, the Olympics of breath work, and I can't do it. So I'm writing it off. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, because it is very manageable and it is very doable. And you're right, like a little, when you just take these one step at a time, I find like sometimes, I don't know, we get I don't know, women, as moms, as parents, whatever, we get so overwhelmed that we dive into everything at once. And then nothing works. And then you're just more frustrated because, well, they said this work and yoga doesn't work and breathing doesn't work. But we dive into like the middle of everything without really finding the coaches, the professionals who know how to start us off and move us forward instead of, getting frustrated and angry with ourselves because, well, I can't do any of this. I'm just going to stay in fight or flight for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's so easy. This is how I see it. And I actually had this funny conversation yesterday is that I would do this myself, I was like, oh gosh, I don't like this. And I was so impatient with my process.
Mm-hmm.
And my impatience with my process, I'd be like, I wanted to do more and more and more and more. And it really can create more sickness or dysfunction, I dare I say, or just irritability or discomfort. And working with someone that says, slow down, hang on a second. I'm going to show you, but just do this one thing again, just do this one thing. And don't look at the outcome, immediate outcome. You'll feel some difference. However, if you can do this consistent over time, you'll forget you're doing it. And this is the thing that I think is really wonderful is, I've worked with friends and family too, and they'll be like, oh, I won't do that. I don't want to do that. And you're like, okay. However, they heard it the first time, right? Like the only way you're going to know how to do something is if you hear it at least once. Okay. And then you recognize it. And then you hear it 20 times later by somebody else or someone else. And it wouldn't have clicked unless you heard it that first time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it may not be today, may not be tomorrow, may not be like 6 months from now. However, that that's there. So at some point in your life, you know what? I'm going to try this now. Maybe this might help. And you know what? It did this next time. And what we do and what I do is that it really is a lifelong process. Ayurveda is not our go-to here. Breathwork's in our go-to right away. This isn't taught to us all the time. This is something we start to get to know over time based upon need.
Yeah.
Wait, something's not quite right here. I need more information. How do I navigate this?
Yeah.
Just what we see sometimes is the end result out there, not the beginning. And the beginning is very small, very tiny. We don't want to overwhelm. Life is overwhelming to begin with sometimes, Yeah. So just a little bit at a time over time is the way to go. It's how it worked, and then sometimes over like a few years, you look back and you're like, actually, there has been some changes that I didn't realize I didn't realize, I thought I'd be here in this moment. And here I am. Yeah. That's actually pretty great. And it just takes a few little bits and pieces over time, just a little bit at a time to change. We can't change everything overnight. If we did, it would present more issues, more discomfort, probably.
Yeah. I feel like it's planting a seed.
Yes.
We don't plant the seed and then dig it up the next day to see the tomato plant, right? We just plant the seed. And we just every day put a little water on there, do a little breathing, maybe walk, maybe stretch, and that's watering your seed. And then eventually, oh my God, look at the tomato. Like it's just, if you can picture it like that, because that's the realistic, like looking for the end result so quickly. Again, we see it on social media. Oh, look where they are. I'm comparing myself to where they are. And then you never get there because that's not who you are. They planted the seed 20 years ago. That's their tomato. You got to grow your own tomato plant, right?
Absolutely. 100. Yeah. It's such a, there are those moments that I don't always get to see the end result of my work as well. Yeah. However, every now and again, you'll see someone years later, they'd be like, oh my gosh, remember when we had talked about this, that, or the other? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. How did that go? They're like, I didn't do it until like a couple of years later.
Yeah.
And actually was able to do it. And then there's some things, where you don't know how it's going to work out. And they're like, you know what? It opened me up for so many other things that I never thought I would ever experience.
Wow.
So coming to see, and it did for me too, as well, going to learn this craft or this science, Ayurveda and breathwork. I've met so many people along the way. Mm-hmm. And, same thing with anyone else, if you're working with someone, you say, hey, I'm part of Ayurveda too, is referring them to other people that might be helpful for them. Like, I send someone dancing. I said, why don't you go dancing? Do something uplifting. And, she was like, oh, I might do that. And I'm like, find a friend and see how it feels. It doesn't have to be a lesson or taught, just go somewhere where you can just go dance and nobody cares what you're doing. You're just being you. Mm-hmm. And over time, they're like, oh my gosh, did you know that there's this community? They all dance every Friday night and we do this sort of thing. And, it's like, and that's what it is too. It's like, you don't always have to just do this one thing, right? Everything.
Yeah.
Everything matters. Everything counts. It all works together in some way, shape, or form. And the more you get to know yourself, and that's in a deeper way, and reflect and able to do that, the more you grow and the more you're able to see what's out there for you and what can enrich your life and your children's lives as well. You're like, oh my gosh, you just see mom, she went dancing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, did you see dad and mom, they went dancing together? Oh my gosh. Like, what's that about? And they come back happy and they talk about it and they joke about it. And like laughter for us was like the biggest medicine ever. Like, being able to not take yourself too seriously. Yeah. All of that stuff. It just really, like you said, you plant the seed, it starts to grow and it develops into something that you never thought was possible sometimes. And it can go in so many different directions. Yeah. And that is really what it is enriching your world and your life and seeing what's out there for you and knowing that you're a sacred being. We are so important to ourselves first.
Oh right? My gosh, yes.
Yeah. And showing that to your children as well is so important too, is that, mom and dad or dad and mom both feel that they're important people and so am I, right? Because we want to teach that to them too. Like, I don't know how much more I can say to my children. I love them so much. However, in order for them to really love themselves, I have to reflect that too and show them that I love myself so much. I'm going to do these things to enrich my life. Yeah.
I feel like you're breaking cycles.
Yeah.
You're breaking cycles that, and again, whenever I say this about our parents and their parents, it's never a slam. We do whatever, everyone does what they can out of love and what they know. Mm-hmm. But as we start to grow and evolve, we start seeing things like, oh, that really stuck with me and it probably shouldn't. And so when we are doing this, we're not just doing it for ourselves and we're not just doing it for our kids. We're like breaking cycles of stress and trauma. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I can do my best. I'm not an expert. Okay. So, but I can certainly speak on, it's a deep reflection on that one too, Cheryl. I can certainly say that's a big subject. What I can say is, for me, I don't take it lightly, but I also take it lightly. So I know it's important. I know it's something that I feel is necessary for our children to go in a direction or grow from our experiences. And from what I know and from what I understand, I can say whatever I want to say, but it's true, is what they see. And having also love for my own family and my parents as well, but at the same time knowing that, right, maybe this wasn't the right way for me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a piece too, is, as we move forward, it just wasn't right for me. And I tried that direction. I tried those ways. Again, it didn't work for me, with great love for the past. However, I'm going to move forward. And there's reflection. However, I'm not going to keep looking back. and keep trying to do that over and over again, knowing, right? So part of self-love, and so I feel myself too, is deeply loving myself, knowing that if this is not working for me, it's okay to try something different, because I want to feel better. I want to live a nourishing, happy, fulfilling, joyful life. And part of that is to take action based upon my experience. And if it's something that doesn't work, then you try something different. And when your kids see that, I can touch the burner 3 or 4 times, right? And, and then it's shame on me, right? Yeah. So, and that's part of it too, is that, I feel like my kids are kind of starting to do that as well. Like, it takes time to really see it, and develop. Like, 2 of my children are adults now, and noticing it and seeing and feeling. And then having that ability too is to have a conversation around even errors I may have made, and just be like, you're right. I totally missed that. What do you think? And having that kind of conversation too is, I think, also breaks a lot of things, some cycles as well, is having an adult conversation with your child about really what would work better for you. What I did too, what didn't really necessarily assist you on that one too. What do you think?
Yeah.
And letting them navigate on their own and seek their own, wants or needs or tools, or educate themselves on what works for them. And so I think, I take it seriously, but at the same time, I don't want to be totally I don't want to hold on to it so much that, I'm like, oh gosh, I did something wrong. And yeah, maybe I made a mistake, but at the same time, what can we do at this point, to make things better?
Yeah. I think that's huge. And our kids, I find too, my kids are adults as well. Mm-hmm. And really, thank goodness, have no problem calling me out on something I used to do, or even did do, or, and that's the pause and the breath, because, we can instantly get offended, or we can say, oh, okay, that's, that wasn't my intention, or I'm sorry, or I'm sorry is fine. I'll do better. Mm-hmm. Thank you for telling me, because I don't want to go down that path. Mm-hmm. And it's such an interesting relationship that you can create with your adult children, and even with your teens, when they really feel like you take accountability. Mm-hmm. And, maybe you are steadfast in whatever it is you were believing then, or maybe you're like, oh, that might have been my mom in 1962, yeah. When things were a little different. So, yeah. Sometimes you hear people say, oh my God, I hear my mother come right out of my mouth. And sometimes it's funny, and sometimes oh, maybe not so funny.
Yeah.
But being open to those conversations, mm-hmm. It's building groundwork to, my experience now, my kids being adults, we're great friends, and mm-hmm. we can really talk, and we can really reflect, I feel. And that's, you're not just raising teenagers to go out in the world and see you later. You're raising these human beings, and you want them to not need you, but you want them to want you to hang around and be that person. And I always want to be that person. So you can't be that person without taking some accountability in some ways that you might have not done the best thing. And what could I have done better? I think it's
absolutely. And and also those moments too, where I know that, someday maybe they'll be parents, right? So mm-hmm. the understanding, and like you said, the breaking of cycles, it's not going to be perfect at all going in that direction. However, dropping something that may not work, mm-hmm. something else up that may be more helpful, because the times are very different than when I was a kid too as well. I joke, they're like, oh gosh, I sound like, gosh, I'm saying when I was a kid, I'm like, did I really just say that?
Back in the day,
did I really just say that? And I did. I said that. I certainly did. That's the truth. And so, just that, and I take things I take seriously, but also lightly at the same time. Okay, that doesn't work so much. I tried it. I tried it more than once. It's not working. So we got to pick something up or nothing at all. And, and move forward from that. And it is. And it's a kind way of breaking cycles. There are some moments where you have to be like, nope, this is not happening anymore. That's, there's something or whatever you got to be really, black and white about.
Yeah.
And then things are like, in a kind way, this is just not really working. We're going to try something different, doing it in a softer way.
Yeah.
When we start making change in a soft way, the affect or the what comes back to you is a little bit softer too. So it's easier to make subtle changes, having to make a big change.
Yeah.
We make them more subtle, so it's a little bit easier to take on the responsibility or even whatever comes back in our direction on how to reevaluate what might work, what may not work.
So good. Oh my goodness. Brett, just before we wrap up, just please tell everybody how to work with you, how to find you, all the good things. Brett Aldrich, please.
It's pretty simple. I just, you can reach out to me through my website. I have contact information there. It's seedthespirit.com. And my contact information is there. You can reach out. We do a quick free consultation at the beginning if that's something you have interest in, or you can just we can make an appointment and get together and have communication about what works for you. That's very easy. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Seed the Spirit is also on Facebook. I have a business page there as well. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Everything will be in the show notes. And, this has just been a fabulous conversation. I hope, like me, you are walking away with a deeper understanding that supporting your teen starts with supporting ourselves. When we breathe differently, we respond differently, we show our teens what calm connection looks like, not through words, but through presence. We are reminded today that these practices don't have to be big or complicated. It's about small, sustainable results. That's where your wisdom, your patience, and your compassion lives. I really encourage you to listen and re-listen. Everything is in the show notes with Brett. And it's not about being perfect. It's just about being present. Brett, thank you so much for your knowledge, your expertise, and your passion for this subject. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Parenting Teens Advice Redefined for today's world, and we will catch you next time. Thank you for listening to another episode. I hope you loved this one as much as I did. And I just wanted to share something with you because, parenting teens is not just about managing these challenges that we talk about on all the episodes. It's also about evolving alongside them. And I'm Cheryl, and not only the host of this podcast, but I'm also the creator of Insight to Impact coaching and consulting. And I help you, moms of teens, reconnect with your true selves so you can lead with purpose. You can parent with clarity. You can create stronger, more meaningful relationships with your kids. Because here's the truth. The transformation starts with you. Together, we will break free from the stress and overwhelm. We will rediscover your power. We will create the life and the family dynamic you always dreamed of. If you're ready to start this journey, let's do it. You might just not recognize your life in the next 90 days. It all starts with a call. There's no pitch. There's no pressure. Just a call to see if I can help. We'll talk about your goals. We'll talk about what's making you feel stuck and what might be getting in your way. And everything you need to connect with me is in the show notes. Again, I'm Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me here on Parenting Teens Advice Redefined for today's complex world, and the creator of Insight to Impact Coaching and Consulting. Have a great day.